So good, so good, so good.
Everything you want for summer is at Nordstrom Rack stores now, and up to 60% off. Stock up and save on the brands you love like Vince, Sam Edelman, Frame, and Free People. Join the Nordy Club to unlock exclusive discounts, shop new arrivals first, and more. Plus, buy online and pick up at your favorite Rack store for free. Great brands, great prices. That's why you Rack.
Ready to soundtrack your summer? With Red Bull Summer All Day Play, you choose a playlist that fits your summer vibe the best. Are you a festival fanatic, a deep end DJ, a road dog, or a trail mixer? Just add a song to your chosen playlist and put your summer on track. Red Bull Summer All Day Play. Red Bull gives you wings. Visit redbull.com/brightsummer ahead to learn more. See you this summer.
For the News and Observer, I'm Dawn Vaughan, Capitol Bureau Chief and host of Under the Dome. Today's episode is sponsored by Duke Energy. Today I'm joined by Jane Winik Sartwell and Shelby Swanson. Jane covers higher education, is on our politics team, and this is an awesome politics sports crossover episode because we also have Shelby, who covers UNC athletics, on our sports desk. So let's start with NIL, which is perfect for this crossover episode because there's a bill in the legislature. For anyone who's not aware of what NIL is, Shelby, if you can tell listeners and viewers, now are on YouTube too, what NIL is.
So essentially NIL, it stands for name, image, and likeness, and it's the ability for, every person, right, has the legal right to control how their image is used, particularly for commercial reasons. Now, the reason that that's been such a buzzword over the past few years is because in 2021, the NCAA finally changed rules to allow their students, or as the NCAA classifies them, student athletes, to profit from their name, image, and likeness. They weren't previously allowed to do that. Now they are, and so that's why you see, college athletes like Caitlin Clark, for instance, when she was at Iowa, appearing in all these State Farm commercials, etc. If you tuned into the NCAA tournament, you probably saw a ton of Boozer twin ads. I know they were all over my TV screen. Again, that's a result of the changing rules around NIL for college athletes.
Okay, so we've got this bill, it's Senate Bill 229. What are the changes that the General Assembly is looking at?
Yeah, so essentially, and again, obviously this is a proposed bill, hasn't been much movement on this for the past 2 weeks, really. Going back to that Wednesday hearing when obviously it was brought up during, I think, a meeting of the Higher Education House Standing Committee. But essentially right now in North Carolina, the current law prohibits public access to individual student-athlete NIL deals for any public universities that are already subject to public records law. So that's kind of how things currently stand, right? But now this bill, and there's one or two other things kind of attached, but the main purpose of it is to exempt revenue sharing information from public records requirements. So,
why would they do that?
Yes, so the purpose is that obviously now, so just kind of a step back, a history lesson for those that aren't aware. So revenue sharing, right, that went into effect this past academic year. That means that, that's a result of the House settlements, House NCAA settlements, and that allowed that, individual institutions like, our triangle schools, they can all now share revenue, share money kind of in-house with their athletes. This has been the first year of this, and so now this legislation is hoping to also exempt that information from public records requirements. The argument essentially being that the Power 4 institutions, like let's say an NC State, UNC, are at some sort of a competitive disadvantage compared to a Duke if that information is required to be shared publicly.
Okay, so right now the bill's it's a Senate bill, it's in Senate Judiciary as of our recording time on Monday, It's not on Senate Judiciary's agenda, but we also don't have that for Judiciary yet. So we'll see as the week goes on. Want to talk about different crossover between higher ed and politics. Former Republican State Rep Kristen Baker has been nominated to the UNC Board of Trustees. We see a lot of people, once they've left the legislature, ended up over there. So what's the status of Baker?
Yeah, so the UNC Board of Governors, the System Board, will vote on whether to nominate her, Kristen Baker, to the Chapel Hill Board of Trustees to replace John Pryor in the wake of his January resignation. So that was a big news story back then.
I believe we broke the news on that, if I can hop in, so shout out.
Nice, yeah, I wasn't here yet. Yeah, so she she's a doctor from Cabarrus County. She played an important role in bringing new abortion restrictions to North Carolina, as well as she was involved in some legislation around banning transgender girls from playing on women's sports teams. So she's a conservative, and yeah, if that nomination goes well, she will sit on the board from right around now to late June 2027.
Okay. Baker, it was all the Republican House and Senate women were the ones that led that when the SB 20 legislation came forward. So she was part of that.
I
remember.
see.
All right. So we are in, I hadn't mentioned it yet. I'll throw this in here now. I think everybody knows that of the big budget news this past week, the House Speaker Destin Hall, Senate Leader Phil Berger have come to a deal. There's no budget document or anything that is in the works, but the major holdup with funding for everything and everybody except for the Medicaid rebase bill and these very small spending bills from late last year has been because Berger and Hall have not had an agreement on the amount of raises for teachers and state employees or the tax policy, and they finally got to that point, that agreement now. So wanted to mention the budget really quick because it was in a budget. I don't even remember what year it is now. Someone can correct me or listeners about that created the School of, this is my segue into the School of Civic Life and Leadership at UNC, which had come in the past about that. So there's news on that front, Jane. So what have you been working on about that?
Yeah, so the School of Civic Life and Leadership, UNC announced that it's going to become an independent school, not part of the College of Arts and Sciences anymore. It'll vault into the same category as the Hussman School or the Keenan Flagler School. It gives the dean, Jed Atkins, a little bit more autonomy. It's interesting because there was a huge investigation into the school leadership practices, hiring practices that just wrapped up. They're not making those results public, but so it's an interesting segue to then elevate the school in this way following that.
And we'll see more coverage from you soon on the school too. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about this UNC omnibus bill and other stuff going on with higher ed and the legislature. We'll be right back.
This message is sponsored by Duke Energy. Duke Energy is meeting North Carolina's growing energy demand through a stronger, more resilient grid. That's why we're making strategic infrastructure improvements and implementing self-healing technology to avoid outages and minimize disruptions, all while keeping costs as low as possible. To learn more, visit duke-energy.com/NC Future. This message is sponsored by Duke Energy.
You're listening to Under the Dome. I'm Capitol Bureau Chief Dawn Vaughan, here with Jane Winik Sartwell and Shelby Swanson. Right before the break, I was talking about the budget. I do want to mention a little more on tax policy. One of the parts of the budget framework deal that Hall and Berger agreed on was that they propose a constitutional amendment that would cap the state individual income tax rate at 3.5%. This tax year, it's currently at 3.99%, and part of the deal also is that they're going to drop it in 2027 to 3.49%, which was some of the negotiating they had to do because these these revenue triggers had been met, which was what Berger's goal was. So it would have dropped to that anyway. The House wanted to slow and change those triggers. So there's a lot more in that. I have a story just about tax policy, breaking down everything. So y'all can read more about that. And then also I've got a breakdown of all the raises, and then about how the public is kept out of this final budget process, but not entirely, and how you can still be part of it. Because like this like metal framework, if you're imagining a building of the budget, is, you know, all of like the big spending things with taxes and raises, but there's all that stuff in it, including earmarks and everything else. So you can talk to your lawmaker still, because they're all part of this, although some of them have more power and influence than others do. And I've got a story for that as well. So one other thing that's coming up is this UNC omnibus bill. It's on the House calendar for Tuesday. As y'all are listening to this, we're recording this on Monday. It's probably going to stay on the calendar. So, Jane, what's in that bill?
Yeah, so that bill is going to provide some funding for construction projects on campuses across the system, including the phase 1 of the development of Cates West at NC State, which is a big campus project.
What is it called?
Cates West.
West.
Yeah, I'm going to be looking a little more into that, writing more about that in the coming weeks. It allows for some residence hall development at UNC Chapel Hill. And it also gives the UNC Board of Governors more power over more authority over future construction projects. There's also a thing in there, you know, prohibiting state funds for being used for construction on public-private partnerships, which I'm kind of interested by. So gonna see what I can find out about that and sort of what that is in response to.
That actually is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I was also thinking if anyone is actually named Kate West, then they would think it was a cool project.
Yeah, I gotta find Kate West.
And speaking of construction projects, you know, the big construction project going up in downtown Raleigh, there are multiple ones, but the one that's more significant or visible, at least for the state government complex side of town, is the massive education campus, which is going to include UNC System offices. And that project is overseen by the General Assembly and the Legislative Services Office. So we could talk more about that in future episodes. I want to touch on a couple other UNC-focused things. Enrollment funding. What's going on with that?
Sure. So enrollment funding is the system's single biggest priority for this short session. It's really like the only thing that they're worried about. But the enrollment funding bill hasn't had any action since it failed to concur back on April 21st. So yeah, I wonder, you know, the Board of Governors is meeting this week. I'm sure they're going to talk about that and see what they can do to kind of get the ball rolling.
Okay, speaking of like shorter sessions, you can get a degree in 3 years now, or they're trying to do that?
Yes.
What's going on with it?
Very good segue. I like
thank
that. Yeah, so the Peter Hans, the president of the Board of Governors of the UNC System, has led this initiative to make it possible to graduate with a bachelor's degree from the UNC System, from UNC System schools in just 3 years. So it takes an 120 credit hour bachelor and turns it into a 90-hour bachelor. So yeah, they've done a call for proposals to all the system schools saying like, what kinds of degrees do you think you could offer in 3 years? They've heard back. NC State pitched some. UNC Wilmington pitched some. A lot of schools pitched them, not Chapel Hill. But yeah, so it's pretty interesting. A lot of them, they have to be direct preparation for workforce. So you can't have like a history degree in 3 years, but you could have like an engineering or an arc or maybe like an agricultural, you know, things that are direct preparation to go into a job.
My degree is actually in history, and it took me 5 years. But I ended up getting. What are y'all's degrees in? Both journalism?
Journalism and Spanish.
Okay, what about you, Jane?
My undergrad is in photography, actually,
very nice.
and a graduate in journalism.
All right. I mean, I took all the journalism classes, also a minor in political science, which is actually come in handy nowadays. So,
What was your history focus?
I really didn't have one. I really like 20th century American history. I like my favorite. Well, I mean, no one has a favorite war, but the war that's most interesting to me to study is World War II. But this is not a World War II podcast, but it could be.
It could be.
All right, I want to get to some other things before our picks for headliner of the week. One other thing to mention is Ralph Barrick. You wrote about that. He's the coronavirus researcher that's retiring. I had coverage last year with our former higher ed reporter, Corey Dean, about Barrick. And the latest on it with the legislative crossover is that the House Oversight had requested a lot of documents that these other groups had about Barrick. So did he already retire, or is he retiring?
He's retiring in June.
Okay.
His retirement comes as the Department of Health and Human Services, the federal government has moved to debar him, which means that he would not be able to receive any more federal funding for his research because they accuse him of a pattern of deceit and all these things, kind of tying back to this idea that he was somehow untowardly involved with COVID research. Okay. But that's all unproven as it stands now.
All right. So there'll be more to come on that. That story's not over. And this podcast cannot be over until we talk about the Dean Dome, because everyone has an opinion on the Dean Dome in Carolina North. Shelby, I'm going to throw this to you. What's the current status of the Dean Dome's future?
For sure, yeah. Like you said, under the dome, I don't think the podcast would be complete without, going under the story of kind of the Dean Dome talks here. Right now, the talks, for the most part, are in an official capacity on pause. That is a result, obviously, of the coaching change, leadership change, as UNC officials might call it, with Hubert Davis's firing and then the hiring of Michael Malone. And that's, again, why those talks went on pause. They kind of have more pressing matters to tend to. And, talking to UNC leadership that gathered at Amelia Island ACC spring meetings last week, they said that they have continued to be on pause, and really, I think they want to keep it that way, just give, Malone time to flesh out his roster. Spring sports are in full cycle right now. A lot of spring sports right now are having great success at UNC, the lacrosse teams, baseball, etc. There's plenty of stuff going on, more or less, for them to deal with. And also, it's going to take some time, frankly, to build back trust with a lot of the stakeholders that feel like they were misled or just not really looped into the evaluation process when UNC went. And obviously this is detailed in reporting that I've had, other outlets have had about, UNC was more or less on the verge of announcing a move of the Dean Dome as we know it to the Carolina North development, but because of public lashback in December, decided to take some steps back, evaluate things. There's players committee group that have been formed, a few other advisory groups. So those are continuing to meet. Obviously, the Coalition for Smith Center South, kind of that contrarian group that's been started up by Rusty Carter, prominent donor, former BOT guy at UNC, that they have continued to put out just different models, et cetera, pushing their message for a renovated Smith Center that stays on South Campus. That's all going on. But as far as UNC officials, Lee Roberts, Steve Newmark, the incoming AD, Bubba Cunningham, the outgoing AD, as far as any sort of groups containing them talking about the Smith Center, that is on pause for the time being. So unfortunately, the update is that there's not much of an update, but lots more reporting to come out, certainly, just with some of the public records that we've been able to get back that kind of detail, that process that went into evaluating different options around the Smith Center.
So we still got the Dean Dome, or the Smith Center, technically.
Yes.
Where do we know, where did Dean Dome, the phrase, come from? I wonder what the origin is on that. Do you know?
That's honestly, I should know that, really. Yeah. It's quite embarrassing.
Maybe.
I think... you know what? I will look into that. I will make that my personal mission this week. And to be clear, UNC officials have stated that no matter where they move the arena, it's going to continue to be the Dean Smith Center. Yeah. Oh. I think there were some concerns that maybe a move off campus could coincide with, scrubbing the building of that name and giving it up to whatever, business wants to come in and take naming rights. There could still be, sponsorship, right? You could have the Deanie Smith Center sponsored by or presented by Wells Fargo. I don't think that's off the table. But as far as changing the name, it's still going to be Roy Williams Court, still going to be the Smith Center, etc. But no, I will get under the dome, and I'll get to the bottom of
Yeah, we
of
got
that
anything
nickname.
with a dome in the name. We got to know what's up.
That's exactly.
Does anybody know what Hubert Davis is doing? What's he doing now?
So he was actually at the Indiana Fever game last night. So sitting alongside Coach Carlisle, the Pacers head coach. I know that he said, Coach Davis at least said that, after he was fired, he wants to be around coaching, get back into coaching very soon. That's really the first kind of public appearance that I at least have seen him make since, everything went down. But yeah, he was catching some of that sweet WNBA action. So you got to see a good one out there in Indianapolis.
All right. Do you know what he was wearing? Was he not wearing any of his UNC stuff, or like where he might work one day?
It just looked kind of, the casual athleisure
Well, you'd always see
thing
like
that they all have.
Roy Williams wearing like his like UNC and his Kansas pin, or that sort of stuff.
Whatever Julian's is outfitting him in.
All right. Well, we're out of time, so let's go through our picks for headliner of the week. Jane, we'll start with you. What's your headliner?
Yeah, I got to go with country singer Eric Church's commencement speech at UNC Chapel Hill. I guess that was last week. And yeah, it went totally viral. He talked about how, each string of the guitar has a different meaning for our lives and what we value. So I will be writing a story on why that went so viral and sort of the response to it. Hope that will be out later today or tomorrow morning.
Okay. Shelby, what's your pick for headliner of the week?
Yeah, I would say headliner, taking it back a little bit, specifically taking it back. Sorry, hold up. Cut that. Hey, cut the track. Hold up. So taking it back actually 10 years for my headliner of the week, specifically to the release of Chance the Rapper's coloring book. Obviously, that being his Grammy award-winning project, the Chicago-based rapper. But he is making a comeback of sorts and going on a series of different tour stops around the country. I know he's hitting Raleigh later this year, but this week, he will be in Charlotte. I will be in attendance with my little brother for his birthday. And Chance the Rapper also, interestingly enough, in kind of, announcing this tour stop, was recently spotted at some local Charlotte spots, shouting out on his social media profiles, a local ice cream shop. I believe he made a stop at a local record shop. Might have been Hardy Boys, I want to say. If it wasn't, shout out Hardy Boys. I love that. I love that record shop. Maybe an NIL deal in that for me. Not sure if I'm allowed to use this platform to, anyways. But yeah, really excited about that, and should be a good time.
All right, I'm going to stick with the arts and entertainment theme here. I went to Artsplosion in downtown Raleigh. It was like Saturday and Sunday. I went on Sunday. My mom was in town. She and I went to that. I love a festival. I love downtown Raleigh. I parked in my parking garage spot at work, and it was out here on Fayetteville Street, and I bought a bunch of cool stuff and just appreciate that event. So shout out to Artsplosion. All right, that's it for us for the News and Observer. I'm Dawn Vaughan with Shelby Swanson, Jane Winik Sartwell, producer Kevin Keister. Thanks for listening to today's episode of Under the Dome, sponsored by Duke Energy, and we'll talk to you next time.
For more from our politics team, subscribe to the News and Observer at newsobserver.com/subscribe. Follow us on Twitter at Under the Dome and NC Insider, and sign up for our weekly political newsletter, also called Under the Dome, at newsobserver.com/newsletters. Thanks for listening.